All right, let's talk about everyone's favorite head coach, Mike McCarthy, who, this past year has now, they have gotten rid of Kellen Moore, whether it was him or, whoever was in charge, got rid of Kellen Moore. It has been announced he will be doing the play calling offensively this next season, which, a lot of times that happens. It's not a good thing when, there's a difference in play calling. Not always. Sometimes it does work out. Andy Reid has, given up play calling and then taken it back in the past. So we'll see how it goes. But I want to make a video talking about what do I think is going to happen with McCarthy now calling plays for the Cowboys. So let's just get into it, starting off with some film. So let's start off with this play. I want to talk a little bit about, the play calling last year is what I really want to bring up. And I really thought that it was, for the most part, good last year. I mean, it certainly had its peak in this game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the playoffs. This is when it was at its best, where this is a great example of it's a cover 3 zone. They're going to have the receiver on the outside run a deep route towards the corner of the end zone, and you're then going to have tight end Dalton Schultz kind of fake as though he's running an out route towards the sideline towards the top of the screen, but then he's going to eventually go further deep down the field as well. Like, watch how when this play begins, you see how well this play is working. The deep corner is staying further deep because you got to cover that guy. And then for Tampa Bay, they're making sure they cover over the middle because that's where they think Schultz is going. So when Schultz then cuts over deep down the middle of the field, he gets wide open. And this was something that happened pretty consistently for Tampa Bay. It felt like they were, really getting out-coached pretty consistently in that one. Guys were getting open, and that was obviously very good for Dallas. Also, something like this was definitely a flashy play that they pulled off last year, something where you're going to have Prescott is going to fake as though he's, handing the ball off. Watch. Fakes though he's handing the ball off, then rolls out. Tampa Bay totally not ready for that rollout, and Prescott is able to get into the end zone for a touchdown. Really good stuff there by Dallas on that one. And that's the kind of thing that, they just did in that game. Again, that was probably his best performance, maybe Kellen Moore's as a Dallas Cowboys play caller, but still, it was very good. Now, we can head over to the other playoff game. It didn't all work out that way, obviously. That was definitely a very good performance against a good defense, but there were, what happened in the game that they lost? I still thought that there were some good play calls in this one. There's only so much you can do when you're going up against a defense that does the right thing to counteract your counterattacks, essentially, where, this play, the way it's supposed to work, you have CeeDee Lamb kind of being a decoy right here, taking away the middle of the field, taking away Fred Warner. You're then going to have another receiver kind of go where, Lamb takes away the middle of the field. You have another receiver go towards the middle of the field, hopefully get open. Look at as you see, that's what they're trying to do, but it's getting defended relatively well. There still is maybe a small window where Prescott could make this throw, but as you see, this isn't quite able to be made as it's going to end up being an incomplete pass. So for Dak Prescott, for, Dallas, I certainly wouldn't look at that play and call it a negative play call. Again, didn't work out, but sometimes you have good play calls that just don't happen to work out, and I would probably say that this was one of them. So for me, I thought that as a whole, at the end of the day, I don't view coaching as are you winning or losing, or is your offense doing well or doing poor. Obviously that's, going to happen if you're a good coach, is those things will happen. But for the most part last year, I did think that there was, for the most part, good play calling. And so I do think that there's probably more room for them to get worse this next year than for them to get better. If we go over to this chart now, we're getting into the charts here. This is an interesting thing. I find this chart fascinating. This is something that I actually made for a video, relatively recently, not a bit ago now at this point, but this is going to be Mike McCarthy, who's an offensive minded coach, whether that's as a play caller or just, being an offensive head coach. You still do have an impact in the game plan and everything like that. It's not like the offensive coordinator and play caller, they just take it all, and the head coach does nothing. But if you look at the what this is the expected points added, and the way you get expected points per drive, and it's a bit complex in how you get this calculation, but it's using Pro Football Focus grades, the talent that the roster had, what the expected points per drive totals would be, and then what actually happened. Now, you can't equate all of that simply due to coaching, because obviously luck comes into play, and also just level of competition comes into play, which, are also factors. But still, it's an interesting chart to look at as the overall differential. You've seen good years and bad years. It's been very, up and down. But, his banner year was 2011, and then also in 2022. Those were the banner years for Mike McCarthy. So he has had some good years, but as an offensive play caller, he hasn't really had a season that I would say was good since 2011, which was it was a very different game at that point. So, well, yes, there's been some good years, maybe nothing recently where he's been the offensive play caller. If you look at kind of the overall stats for McCarthy, on average, the total, if you accumulate all of it, the total would be, minus 0.6 points per drive over the course of his career. So in an average season, he goes, 0.375 points per drive under expected. So the overall WAR would be, 2/10 of a loss, essentially, over the course of his entire career, which has been a very long career. So the reality is he's basically been a league average coach. That's kind of where he's been at, which is fine. That's not terrible. Although I do think part of why Dallas has had so much success these past few years in the McCarthy era, or at least, good success, has been to some degree because of how well he's hired his coordinators. When I think of Mike McCarthy, and really when I think of the Dallas Cowboys these past couple of years, I don't view them as a team that's been badly coached or even mediocrely coached. I actually view them as a team that usually overperforms expectations and typically has their players in positions to succeed. Now, again, with the exception of maybe the final play call of the season against San Francisco in the playoffs in back-to-back seasons, other than that, I do feel like the play calling has actually been a positive, and the coaching has actually been a positive for Dallas. Now, does that mean that will continue with McCarthy as a play caller? To me, it's a big question mark, and it really is going to come down to how much has McCarthy learned. The past couple of years in Green Bay, just quite frankly, weren't good. It just was not great for the Packers, and I didn't think that they were getting the most out of Aaron Rodgers. So that's maybe a slight concern if you're a Dallas fan. And again, just the fact of why are we doing this anyway? It was working last time. Why even have Kellen Moore leave and mutually part ways? I thought it was, still an effective offense, an offense that continued to overperform, or at least did, last year, very much overperformed. Again, maybe he wanted to go. We don't know, because mutually parted ways. Who knows how mutual that is and which side was more mutual in that, right? But that's not proper grammar, but you know what I'm trying to say. It's just a fascinating situation. So what do I think is going to happen? I do think Dallas is going to take a hit this year because of it. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't know if it'll be a massive hit. Again, McCarthy's not a mess. He never really has been outside of a year or two. For the most part, he's just very slightly below average, and that's kind of what I'm expecting the X's and O's offensively to be for Dallas next year. But yeah, that's kind of how I view it. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.